Today I'm talking to Paul Powlesland, a river guardian. You moved your houseboat to the river routing in Barking on the outskirts of London. What inspired you to do that?
Well, I've lived on a boat for 11 years now, and my initial inspiration to do that was really just to live in a way that was cheap and interesting. But the longer I lived on a boat, I think the more I fell in love with nature and the connection to nature that comes from being on a boat. And then about 6 years ago, I wanted to get not only closer to nature, but to stay in a place and to nurture it because I was planting trees before, but I would like plant a tree and then have to move my boat to somewhere else and keep moving and moving and moving. So I'd never see how my trees were doing. So I wanted to move somewhere where I could actually stay and look after the nature there and connect with it year after year after year. And I didn't actually really intend to necessarily become a river guardian when I moved here, but that's kind of just how it's happened, I guess.
That's really cool. So basically, you just started planting trees and now you're a river guardian.
Yeah, I mean, planted trees, started taking out rubbish, but I really believe that the knowledge is love. Like the more time you spend somewhere, the more you get to know it, the more you kind of fall in love with it. And that's really what happens with this river. When I first moved here, I barely knew it at all, and I found it quite hostile at times. But the longer I spent here, the more I fell in love with it and wanted to protect it, and it didn't really, there was never a decision. It just kind of, it just happens that way. Like when you get to know somewhere, you fall in love with it, and then when you see someone polluting it, it's painful. You want that. And so it's kind of just naturally occurred that way, I guess.
Cool. You founded the River Routing Trust. What does this organization do to help the river?
Quite a lot of things we've discovered. Really, whatever we are able to do on the ground um to protect the river and sort of act as its guardian. So, you know, we present the river's interest in local planning decisions. So, if they want to build a development near to the river, we say, well, you can build a development, but you do it in a way that is friendly towards the river. We notice where like birds nesting. So, I found a colony of sandmartins which nest in the river walls, and they were going to destroy the river wall and rebuild it. And I said, no, if you do that, you need to do it in a way that means the colony of sand martins can carry on. Yesterday, no, the day before yesterday, I was walking along the river and found the water company here called Thames Water was putting huge amounts of sewage straight in, like loads of it. Um, and I put that on Twitter, and loads of people got really angry at Thames Water. And then the day I walked there, and they set up a whole operation, like tankers, pumps, everything, to stop the sewage going into the river. And if I hadn't have noticed that, if I hadn't have tweeted that, sewage would still be going into the river right now. Um, Last weekend, they got 25 volunteers to come and pick up rubbish, and they picked up hundreds of bags in a day just to avoid it going into the river. And then on Saturday this week, we're having a rubbish picking and tree planting day. So today I went to another part of London to get cuttings of a tree called the black poplar to plant along the roading. So yeah, whatever we can do, whatever's in our power to look after and protect the river and to make sure that what's in its interest is also being heard in the human system, I guess.
That's really great. You've been working on this for 5 years. Has the river healed already?
Not fully. No, I mean it's a long way to go, and there are times when I feel dejected. It's tough. We cleared the riverside area along the river last year entirely, and then we came back this year and had to do the same amount again. And that is hard when you clean something up. And I've cleaned some areas 5 times now a year, and it's just as bad the next year, and that's quite difficult. But on the other hand, it is making a change. There are hundreds of trees now that are 3 to 4 years old, which because they're wet trees, they grow along the river like willow, alder, and poplar. They grow super fast. So some of them are all that I planted 3 or 4 years ago are already 3, 4, 5 times my height, like big trees. I climbed them for the first time last year. They're big enough to climb. Is a key metric of how big they are they big enough to climb? And I also highly recommend, by the way, for both you and any of your listeners who are kids, getting the tree planting in early, because the earlier you plant trees, the sooner you're able to climb them. And I waited till I was in my 30s till I started to plant trees. If I'd started when I was your age, some massive trees now. I can really climb those and like look up at them, and yeah. So start young on the tree planting. Always start young, so you can get to enjoy them yourself. Um, yeah, that's a big difference. And I feel like the bird song around here is louder now, maybe because of all the new trees. And there is less rubbish in the river, and the water quality is better, but it's still pretty bad because humans are still treating nature and rivers in particularly very badly. Feels like constantly fighting against a system that wants to hurt the river.
I planted a tree in my front yard, and then my mom also planted, I have, sorry, I have one in my front yard, and then in front of my front yard, I also have another one. But like on the side of my house, I have three more trees.
When did you plant them?
I planted one of the, there's one of them I planted in a video, and the other two, they're actually just outside here. But
All
there,
right. And do you know what trees they are? What
uh,
species?
there's some kind of fruit trees, I think. I'm
Mm.
not sure.
Which is also handy as well, because like you plant fruit trees, you get fruit. Sounds obvious, but really cool. You're like, oh, all this stuff, all this fruit just comes out of nature for free. It's quite great.
Yeah, there's also an oak tree in
Right.
my front yard.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Although they grow very slowly. So I have to say, kind of, I planted oaks like 5 years ago, and they're still tiny. So I'm often a bit like, come on, go faster. But they also live longer as well. So some of these oaks that you plant will probably be here long after like everyone on Earth is gone. All the humans that are currently alive now will be gone, and that oak will carry on, which is sort of good, isn't it?
Yeah. You are a lawyer and you founded Lawyers for Nature. What does this organization fight for?
So we fight for a better relationship between law and lawyers and natural world, because at the moment we have a system where law doesn't take the interest of nature into account properly, because no one is speaking for nature. So we help those who are trying to save nature. So people who are trying to save trees, present them. And we also do campaigning, so saying that actually nature should have rights. So humans have rights that they can go to a court. So if someone, I don't know, if someone crashes into your mum's car, your mum can sue them because they have that accident. But if someone destroys an oak tree, the oak can't sue because it doesn't have that right before a court. That's one of the things we're really campaigning for. Um, and also trying to get to voluntarily adopt what's called rights of nature. So this idea of nature being represented in the system. So last year, Lawyers for Nature worked with a cosmetics company in the UK called Faith in Nature, and they became the first company to appoint nature to its board. So a representative of nature now sits on the company board representing nature in all the company's decisions,
That's really
which should just kind of, yeah, it's cool. It should just be a basic, shouldn't it? It's like this whole world exists, and we depend on it for our lives and our prosperity. We should at least have its voice represented in the decisions we're making about it, I'd say. And that's what we say in Lawyers for Nature.
But also when you say it's the people's life, it's also the animals.
Yeah, yeah.
Last month I spoke to Ecocide. It seems like more and more people are turning to the law to stop these illegal attacks on nature. Are you hopeful that these lawsuits will stop more eco crimes?
Not by themselves. They are, I think we should be wary of the idea that law and lawyers in themselves are going to stop all this destruction. Like I can magically wander in a suit and just stop all this happening. That's not how it works. Lawsuits and amazing campaigns like Stop Ecocide will make a difference, definitely, and they need to happen. But we also need campaigning and activism, and also everyone to play their part. We shouldn't rely on lawyers. Every single person can become a guardian of nature. Whether you choose a tree or a river, you can decide to look after it yourself and to fight for that. Like my guardianship, it helps that I'm a lawyer because when people are saying stuff, I know all the right lawyer terms to come back at them with. But I could do most of them doing without any legal qualification, purely about adopting a mindset of getting to know a piece of nature, deciding that you want to fight for it, and stepping into that role as guardian. And we can all do that, and we can do it in a small way, in a big way. You don't have to be as crazy as me and move all your home to a river and live there. Just decide that you want to protect a certain tree that you love, or to set up a local group to go and plant trees by your river, or take rubbish by your river, or speak for your river in local council decisions.
Yeah.
We Law is important, but so too is the decision of as many people as possible to stand up and be a guardian for nature.
Yeah. And you don't really need to be a guardian to help the earth. You could also talk to people, you can spread the word, you know?
Yeah, but that is, I see that as part of guardianship, right? Or it's all about guardianship. I mean, and also when I say guardianship, no one has appointed me this, by the way. Like, I this is not my job. It's like I don't get paid for it. But more importantly, I have no to do any of this stuff at all. Like, no one has said I can do it. No one said you are the river roding guardian and given me a special certificate. I've just decided that's what I'm going to do, and so I'm doing it. So even spreading the word to other people is part of it. Talk about your love for nature and want to protect it. Do what you're doing, interviewing people and getting the word. It's all a form of nature guardianship, I think.
Yeah. The indigenous people of Canada believe that things like rivers are sacred. You said the routing is sacred. It is a being and it does have rights, and that you will manifest those in whatever way you can. How will you do that?
I think at the heart of a lot of our problems with nature it's ultimately quite a spiritual question, how we relate to the earth. And do we see the earth and nature as like a dead resource for us to use however we want as humans? Or do we see it as something sacred? And I see it as something sacred. And importantly, I think if we say that to people enough, they might come to believe it too and to agree with us. So it's important that if you believe nature to be sacred, that you say that. Um, and then, as I say, it's really working out what the right to the river should be. So, should the river should have the right to not be full of rubbish, to not have sewage in it, to flow, to have natural ecosystems, to have nature and trees by the side of it. All of these things, deciding what they are and doing whatever whatever I can to peacefully make that happen. Um, Peacefully, but not necessarily with anyone's permission. Crucial. I haven't asked permission to go and plant these trees or take this rubbish out or to walk along the river. I just do it and dare people to stop me. Because if you're doing something positive, they don't want to stop you. So yeah, I say, I could sit here and bore you all evening with like talk of going to council meetings and talking about planning and um, tree preservation orders and rubbish and sewage and all these kind of things. But there's many things that you really can do to uphold a river's rights in a very practical way.
Yeah.
And crucially, you don't have to wait to change the law. Like all of this stuff I'm doing under the current legal system. So, for instance, the sewage spill that I told you about that happened the other day, that's already illegal. It's a criminal offence. It wasn't allowed to happen, but it was happening because nobody was there checking. The government's basically given up, and so um, if I hadn't have walked along the river, just going for a walk along the river to see if everything was okay, then would still be going on now. So sometimes you can have a law, but if no one's there to actually speak for the river and look out for it, then that law is sometimes useless. So I really feel there is a very important role that all of us can have in even holding the current laws in relation to nature and campaigning for better ones as well.
I've been camping in the Algonquin Provincial Park interior with my family since I was a baby. You're part of the Right to Roam campaign, fighting for increased access to nature. There was a case last month that stopped wild camping in the last place it was legal in England. I was talking to my friend Joe from Reserva who lives in Wales, and I had no idea. Everyone couldn't camp in national parks like we can in Canada. What happens next?
Well, to be honest, I had no idea that we weren't allowed to camp either because I just did it anyway. So everyone was like, "Oh, you weren't actually allowed to do any of that." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to stop doing it." Which again is quite important. Just carry on, basically. But yeah, it it goes back to what I was saying to you earlier, which is in order to protect something, to become a guardian, you kind of have to love it. But it's very hard for people to love something they don't even know. And that's why it's so important for us to fight for people to be able to access nature. Because, yeah, they need to be able to go there and spend time in nature and camp out under the stars to really feel that love for nature that will drive them to protect it. In terms of what happens next in England, ironically, the slightly evil lander who brought this court to stop people camping on his land has actually really helped the Right to Roam campaign because people got really angry about it. And the main opposition party in the UK, Labour, has now pledged to actually overturn it by a new law in Parliament if they get power. So it may well be that actually by bringing this law case, the landowner has actually helped the Right to Roam and helped more people actually go out into nature and spend time in nature.
How can kids become a nature guardian?
Well, again, you don't have to wait for someone to come give you a certificate. You can just, the best way to start is usually to get to know a piece of nature. And maybe you do already. Maybe you already have a favorite tree or a favorite river. But if you don't, start spending time walking and sitting just as a place called a sit spot. Just choose somewhere to sit and just be in nature. And usually a specific part of nature will usually talk to you just sort of just fall more for it, makes sense, and you'll begin to feel that connection to it, and then from that you can then start protecting it. So maybe if you really love a river but you notice a lot of rubbish there, then you could organize a rubbish clearing day with your friend or your school class, or maybe do a project about the river with your school class about looking at what the threats to it are. Is it rubbish? Is it sewage? Is it drought? Is it dams? And start campaigning to change those. So do they need to remove some dams? Do you need to plant more trees? Again, something you can do with your class. Or if there's a tree that you love, is it fully protected? And if not, can you apply for it to be protected? Or again, project with your class about trees and about why that tree is special to you and why we should protect trees. There's loads you can do, but it obviously depends on what the specific issue with your river is. You know, the issues I have on river roading are going to be very different, presumably, to some of the issues you have on rivers in Canada or in other places around the world. But there is always something you can think.
Yeah, like in schools, you could talk to your teachers about doing a cleanup.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
exactly. But it's some rivers don't necessarily need cleaning. Some need like dam removal, which is obviously more difficult if you're a kid, but or anyone to be honest, it's quite to remove a dam. But you know, you can also start campaigning and also even draw attention to the need for dam removal.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me today. Click the link below to donate to River Roading Trust, and remember, together kids can save the world. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.